Media Fact Checker. Today's Australian news. 16 stories. These are the stories in this video. Timestamps are shown if you would like to skip ahead. Story 1 of 16. Australia's February 2024 unemployment rate rise and labour market shifts. Australia's February 2024 unemployment rate rise and labour market shifts. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Australia's unemployment rate rose to 4.3% in February 2024 from 4.1% in January, seasonally adjusted, defying forecasts of stability at 4.1%. Employment grew by 48,900 ABC, or 48,000 Newskamau, in February, exceeding forecasts of 20,000 new jobs. Full-time employment declined by 30,000 ABC, or 30,500 Newskamau, in February, while part-time employment increased by 79,000 ABC, or 79,400 Newskamau. The participation rate rose by 0.2 percentage points to 66.9% in February, with 35,000 more people actively seeking work, ABC. The Reserve Bank of Australia, RBA, increased the official cash rate to 4.1% in February 2024, citing inflation concerns, both sources. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reported the employed total as 14,748,700 in February, while Newskamau did not provide this exact figure, only part-time jobs at 4,631,800. ABC stated the unemployment increase was due to 35,000 more people actively looking for work, but Newskamau did not specify this exact number. ABC mentioned fewer retirements from jobs compared to a year ago, a detail not included in any WSCMEU's coverage. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Story 2 of 16. Rideshare companies adjust pricing to offset fuel costs amid Middle East conflict and rising petrol prices. Rideshare companies adjust pricing to offset fuel costs amid Middle East conflict and rising petrol prices. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. DD Australia introduced a 5c per kilometre fuel surcharge on Wednesday, up from a previous 3c per kilometre in 2022, with the full amount going to drivers. Petrol prices in Australia rose by nearly 50c per litre since the US military action in Iran, based on DD's assumption of 10 litres per 100 kilometres for typical trips. DD's head of external affairs, Dan Jordan, stated that rising fuel prices directly affect drivers' earnings on the platform, citing ongoing pressure from higher operating costs. Uber has not yet announced a fuel surcharge for drivers or delivery partners, despite acknowledging the impact of fuel price increases on workers. Australia Post's April fuel surcharge was 4.8%, the lowest since May 2022, with a previous spike reaching 12% during the 2022 oil price surge. But not all outlets told the same story. Newskamau states DD's 5c per kilometre surcharge is the highest introduced in Australia, while Guardian does not explicitly compare it to past surcharges beyond noting a previous 3c per kilometre in 2022. Newskamau highlights Uber drivers' explicit threats to quit over unaddressed fuel costs, but Guardian does not mention driver walkouts or direct quotes from Uber drivers. Guardian reports Cathay Pacific doubled its surcharge to $209.77 for flights, while Newskamau does not mention airline surcharges or their specific amounts. This story was covered by The Guardian and news.com.au. Story 3 of 16. Australia's High Court strikes down preventative detention laws for former immigration detainees. Australia's High Court strikes down preventative detention laws for former immigration detainees. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The High Court ruled on June 2025 that Australia's preventative detention laws requiring ankle bracelets and curfews for 43 former immigration detainees are unconstitutional. The case involved a Papua New Guinea citizen, referred to as EGH-19, who was convicted of murder in 2006 as a minor and later released on parole in December 2024. EGH19 was placed under ankle bracelet monitoring and a 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew after his visa was cancelled in 2023 for domestic violence offences. The government's 2024 amendments to the laws, targeting those posing a substantial risk of seriously harming the community, were also struck down by the High Court. As of June 2025, there were 346 bridging visa removal holders affected by the regime, with 46 subject to both ankle bracelets and curfews. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports the government had struck a $2.5 billion deal with Nauru to relocate the NZYQ cohort, while the ABC does not mention this specific financial figure. The Guardian states the government could apply for 30-year Nauruan visas on behalf of those released into the community, but the ABC does not detail this visa process. The Guardian specifies 43 people would have their ankle bracelets removed, while the ABC does not provide an exact number of affected individuals beyond the broader cohort. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Story 4 of 16. Former NRL player Chris Walker granted bail after domestic violence charges. Former NRL player Chris Walker granted bail after domestic violence charges. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Chris Walker, 46, is a former NRL and State of Origin player who appeared in Southport Magistrates Court on March 18, 2024, facing domestic violence charges. Walker was granted bail with conditions including admission to a drug and alcohol rehabilitation program, drug and alcohol testing, and leaving southeast Queensland, Gold Coast. Walker was arrested on March 14 after allegedly fleeing police during a domestic violence call-out, later found clinging to a pontoon and claiming he was just going for a swim. Walker's bail was opposed by police due to concerns over reoffending risk and failure to appear at court if released. Walker's prior conviction was a 2004 public nuisance offence involving a brawl in Brisbane's Fortitude Valley, which led to a one-year good behaviour bond. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states Walker's bail conditions in 2007 included weekly police reports, but Newskamau does not mention this requirement. ABC implies Walker's next court date is in April 2024, while Newskamau does not specify the exact return date. ABC describes Walker's 2007 incident as a fine of 25% of his contract fee without specifying the amount, while Newskamau does not detail this financial penalty. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Story 5 of 16. Australian government's response to fuel crisis amid Middle East conflict. Australian government's response to fuel crisis amid Middle East conflict. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Anthony Albanese is convening a snap National Cabinet meeting on Thursday, May 2nd, to coordinate a national response to the fuel crisis caused by the Middle East conflict. The US and Israel launched preemptive strikes on Iran late April 2024, disrupting global oil supply chains and causing fuel price spikes worldwide. Australia has released about 6 days' worth of petrol and 5 days' worth of diesel from its emergency stockpile as part of an internationally coordinated response. The federal government temporarily lowered fuel standards to allow onshore refineries to redirect supplies into the domestic market, injecting an extra 100 million litres per month for 60 days. Anthony Albanese stated the government would announce further measures in the coming days, with fuel security also a focus of the May budget. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian states Australia's fuel supply remains very solid with all deliveries arriving as expected, while ABC and news.com.au emphasise shortages in rural and regional areas despite no reduction in overall supply. The Guardian attributes the shortages to panic buying and stockpiling with a 100% demand surge, while news.com.au and ABC focus on global supply chain disruptions as the primary cause. ABC reports the government warned inflation could peak in the mid to high fours, but this specific figure is not mentioned in news.com.au or The Guardian. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Story 6 of 16. Olympian Rohan Dennis social media post about a Porsche car after his wife's fatal car crash. Olympian Rohan Dennis social media post about a Porsche car after his wife's fatal car crash. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Olympic cyclist Rohan Dennis was given a 17-month suspended prison sentence in May 2024 for an aggravated act likely to cause harm after his wife Melissa Hoskins died in December 2023 when she was struck by his car near their Medindi home in Adelaide's inner north. Dennis pleaded guilty to the charge and was placed on a 2-year good behavior bond with a $100 fine. His driver's license was suspended for 5 years. Melissa Hoskins, an Olympic and world champion cyclist, died after jumping onto the bonnet of Dennis's Volkswagen Amarok, not the Porsche, during an argument about a kitchen renovation. She was dragged under the car as Dennis drove at 20 km/h. Dennis posted a photo of a black Porsche on Instagram on Wednesday with the caption "What an absolute weapon." South Australia's Victims' Rights Commissioner Sarah Quick called the post deeply offensive and said it demonstrated a profound lack of respect for Melissa and her family. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports Dennis posted a Porsche photo on Wednesday evening and deleted his account on Thursday, while news.com.au does not mention deletion timing or account closure. The Guardian states Hoskins opened the car door and Dennis closed it without stopping, but ABC omits this specific detail about the door closure. The Guardian includes Dennis's screenshot of a journalist's voice message calling him rats, which is not mentioned in ABC or news.com.au. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Story 7 of 16. Former Australian tennis player Marinko Matosevic faces doping ban and controversy over anti-doping violations. Former Australian tennis player Marinko Matosevic faces doping ban and controversy over anti-doping violations. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Marinko Matosevic received a 4-year doping ban from the International Tennis Integrity Agency, ITIA, for 5 anti-doping rule violations between 2018 and 2020. The violations included use of a prohibited method through blood doping, while an active player, facilitating another player to blood dope, providing advice to other players on how to avoid positive tests, and use possession of the prohibited substance clenbuterol. Matosevic admitted to undergoing a blood transfusion in Morelos, Mexico, in 2018, shortly before retiring from tennis at age 32 and a half in 2018. Matosevic has coached Australian players Chris O'Connell and Jordan Thompson since retiring in 2018. An independent tribunal dismissed Matosevic's public allegations of ITIA corruption as without merit and confirmed the ITIA acted within its authority. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC does not mention Matosevic was a former Australian number 1, while The Guardian explicitly states this. ABC does not specify that Matosevic admitted to blood doping in a social media post shortly before the hearing, only mentioning it in a confession letter published by The First Serve. The Guardian quotes Matosevic's criticism of ITIA's methods as including threatening circumstances and text message assumptions, while ABC does not include this specific detail. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Story 8 of 16. Utah woman convicted of murdering her husband via fentanyl poisoning after financial and marital disputes. Utah woman convicted of murdering her husband via fentanyl poisoning after financial and marital disputes. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Carrie Richins was convicted of aggravated murder for poisoning her husband Eric Richins with fentanyl in March 2022 in Park City, Utah. Carrie Richins was $4.5 million, $6.4 million, in debt and falsely believed she would inherit Eric's estate worth over $4 million upon his death. Carrie Richins was also convicted of attempted murder, fentanyl-laced sandwich causing blackout hives, and fraudulently claiming insurance benefits after his death. Sentencing was scheduled for May 13, the day Eric Richins would have turned 44. Carrie Richins self-published a children's book titled Asterisk Are You With Me? Asterisk shortly before her arrest in May 2023. But not all outlets told the same story. SMH and Thieves report Carrie asked Lorber for the Michael Jackson stuff, likely lethal fentanyl combo, but Guardian does not mention this detail. SMH and Thieves state Carrie's defense claimed Eric was addicted to painkillers and asked her to procure opioids, but Guardian omits this defense argument entirely. SMH and Thieves describe Lorber's prior denial of dealing fentanyl and her drug court pressure, while Guardian only summarizes Lorber's cooperation without context. This story was covered by The Guardian, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Story 9 of 16. White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer and continues working during treatment. White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer and continues working during treatment. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Susie Wiles, the first woman to serve as White House Chief of Staff, was diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer in the past week, ABC, past week, Guardian, past week. Wiles plans to continue working from the White House while undergoing treatment for breast cancer, ABC and Guardian. Donald Trump announced Wiles's diagnosis on his Truth Social platform on Monday, describing her as one of the strongest people I know and stating her prognosis is excellent, ABC and Guardian. Wiles appeared alongside Trump at a Kennedy Center board meeting within 20 minutes of his announcement, ABC and Guardian. Wiles is 68 years old, Guardian. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC describes Wiles as the most powerful woman in the world, ABC, but The Guardian does not include this exact phrasing in its coverage. ABC emphasizes Wiles's low profile and rare attention from interviews, while The Guardian highlights her polarizing figure status with more explicit praise and criticism from both sides. ABC does not mention the American Cancer Society statistic about 300,000 U.S. breast cancer diagnoses annually, which The Guardian includes. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Story 10 of 16. Media mogul Antony Catalano charged with assault, false imprisonment, and threats, fallout across business empire. Media mogul Antony Catalano charged with assault, false imprisonment, and threats, fallout across business empire. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Antony Catalano was charged by Victoria Police with assault, false imprisonment, and making threats to kill a woman on April 26, 2024, involving dragging a victim by hair and ankles and swinging a clothes iron at her head, leaving her with a broken coccyx. Catalano was granted bail on April 26 despite police requesting it be denied. Next court appearance is May 11. Catalano issued a statement admitting he has been struggling with significant mental health and substance abuse issues for some time, acknowledging he has been urged to seek help by family and friends. Catalano stepped aside from all professional obligations at Australian Community Media, ACM, for at least 6 months and checked into a rehab facility on April 29. ACM's board and executive leadership released a statement saying they are shocked and deeply concerned by the allegations, distancing the company from Catalano and prioritizing employee well-being. But not all outlets told the same story. The Age and SMH both report Catalano was granted bail despite police requesting it be denied, but no contradictions exist between these sources. The Age and SMH both report Catalano's drug use at domain events was an open secret, but SMH emphasizes cocaine use while The Age does not specify the drug type beyond drug abuse. The Age reports Catalano's $30 million penthouse was initially listed with hopes of a $33 million to $36 million sale, while SMH does not mention the original listing price. This story was covered by The Guardian, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Story 11 of 16. Sydney Swans alter tribute speech to remove Jewish community reference after Bondi attack. Sydney Swans alter tribute speech to remove Jewish community reference after Bondi attack. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Sydney Swans changed a tribute speech before their March 5 match against Carlton at the Sydney Cricket Ground to remove references to the Jewish community, honouring Bondi terror attack victims. Matthew Pavlik, Swans chief executive and former player, delivered the speech during the ceremony on March 5, 2024, which included survivors and first responders. Former Swans player Gerard Healy revealed the script was initially supposed to include the line "We stand with the Jewish community" but was altered. Senator James Paterson referred the AFL to the Royal Commission on Anti-Semitism and Social Cohesion, alleging the league may have been involved in the script change. The Royal Commission on Anti-Semitism and Social Cohesion began last month with an interim report due by April 30, 2024. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian and The Age report the Swans' statement that the script change was an error of judgment to use inclusive language, but ABC frames it as a deliberate oversight rather than a conscious effort at inclusivity. The Guardian and The Age do not mention Gerard Healy's claim that he spoke to Swans chairman Andrew Pridham about the script change, which is only reported by ABC. The Guardian and ABC do not include Rabbi Mendy Litzman's praise for the Swans, which is only reported by The Age. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and The Age. Story 12 of 16. Donald Trump's response to Supreme Court ruling on tariffs and his trade policy shifts. Donald Trump's response to Supreme Court ruling on tariffs and his trade policy shifts. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump claimed on Truth Social he has the absolute right to impose new tariffs after the Supreme Court ruled many of his 2023 tariffs were illegal, February 2024 decision. The Supreme Court found the Trump administration lacked sufficient legal justification for using the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEEPA, for many tariffs imposed on countries worldwide. Trump imposed 10% tariffs on goods from much of the world under Section 122 of the 1974 Trade Act, which expire in July 2024. Trump vowed to raise the temporary 10% tariffs to 15% but has yet to do so. U.S. officials launched trade investigations last week to potentially impose new permanent tariffs replacing the repealed ones. But not all outlets told the same story. Guardian Article 1 states Trump's temporary 10% tariffs expire in July 2024, but does not specify the exact expiration date in Article 2. Guardian Article 1 describes Trump's tariff expiration as in July without specifying the month, while Article 2 does not contradict but omits this detail. No contradiction found regarding the Supreme Court's February 2024 ruling on IEEPA justification for tariffs. Both sources agree on this fact. This story was covered by The Guardian. Story 13 of 16. Kyle Sandilands and Jackie Henderson's contract termination and legal dispute with ARN Media over radio show. Kyle Sandilands and Jackie Henderson's contract termination and legal dispute with ARN Media over radio show. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Kyle Sandilands and Jackie Henderson were terminated from their $100 million, each, 10-year contracts with ARN Media, ending the Kyle and Jackie O Show in March 2026. The dispute stemmed from an on-air argument on February 20, 2026, where Sandilands criticized Henderson's focus on astrology, calling her almost unworkable and off with the fairies, leading to her emotional response and absence from the show. ARN Media gave Sandilands a 14-day deadline, expired March 17, 2026, to remedy the alleged serious misconduct and breach of contract, which he denied. ARN Media terminated Sandilands' contract on March 17, 2026, via email at midnight, and announced the end of the show in an ASX statement. The Australian Communications and Media Authority, ACMA, imposed 5-year licence conditions on ARN Media's Kiss FM stations, Sydney and Melbourne, prohibiting strong sexual content in programmes featuring Sandilands or Henderson, following repeated decency breaches in 2025, including urination audio clips, menstruation comments, and masturbation discussions. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC and The Guardian report ARN sent Sandilands a termination email at midnight on March 17, 2026, but SMH states ARN announced the termination on Wednesday morning, March 18, after Sandilands' statement was released. The Guardian claims ARN's ASX announcement on March 3 stated Henderson gave notice she could not work with Sandilands, but Henderson herself denied resigning or quitting in multiple ABC and SMH articles. SMH and The Guardian mention ARN's Melbourne expansion lost 220,000 listeners, 36% of breakfast audience, while ABC states the loss was 220,000 listeners, 36% of breakfast audience, but does not specify the total audience size in the same way. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Story 14 of 16. NRL player Loko Pasifiki Tonga's neck injury and return status after training incident. NRL player Loko Pasifiki Tonga's neck injury and return status after training incident. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Loko Pasifiki Tonga was taken to hospital in an ambulance after a training incident on Thursday at St George Illawarra's Wollongong facility. Tonga sustained a suspected neck injury during a tackle at training and underwent precautionary scans. Tonga was conscious and communicating with medical staff throughout the process at the hospital. Tonga is a 20-year-old forward who played 10 NRL games in 2025 and was listed for the Dragons' Sunday NSW Cup match against Parramatta. The Dragons' initial statement confirmed Tonga's injury was a precautionary concern, not a major neck injury. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports Tonga was listed for Sunday's NSW Cup match against Parramatta, but Newskamau does not mention this detail. ABC does not confirm Tonga's availability for the upcoming weekend match, while Newskamau suggests he could play. ABC focuses on the Dragons' training incident and hospital visit without updating on Tonga's return status, whereas Newskamau provides a clear update on his clearance. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Story 15 of 16. A real possum was found among plush toys in a Hobart Airport gift shop. A real possum was found among plush toys in a Hobart Airport gift shop. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A real possum was found nestled among stuffed animals in the gift shop at Hobart Airport on Wednesday morning. The possum appeared calm when first discovered but caused pandemonium when it left the shop and wandered the departure lounge. Liam Bloomfield, multi-site manager with Lagardère AWPL at Hobart Airport, confirmed the incident and described the possum as not stressed initially. The possum was safely escorted out of the terminal by airport management without incident. The incident occurred around 11:45 a.m. on Wednesday. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC describes the possum as appeared calm but then took a walk outside the shop, which caused pandemonium, while The Guardian does not specify the possum's behavior after leaving the shop. ABC mentions redevelopment works as a possible explanation for the possum's entry, but The Guardian does not mention this detail. The Guardian highlights staff and passengers being delighted, while ABC focuses more on the logistical challenge of managing the situation. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Story 16 of 16. Australian major banks pass on RBA interest rate hike to mortgage holders. Australian major banks pass on RBA interest rate hike to mortgage holders. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Reserve Bank of Australia, RBA, increased the cash rate by 25 basis points on March 26, 2025, from 3.85% to 4.1%. This rate hike was the second consecutive increase by the RBA, totaling 50 basis points in back-to-back meetings. National Australia Bank, NAB, was the first of the Big Four banks to announce it would pass on the full 25 basis point increase to variable rate mortgage holders, effective March 27. NAB Group executive Anna Marinkovic stated the bank recognized the ongoing pressure higher interest rates placed on households. Westpac also announced it would increase home loan variable interest rates by 0.25% per annum for new and existing customers, effective March 31st. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau states NAB's new rates start from March 28th, but ABC states they start from March 27th. News Kamau claims the RBA rate increase brought the cash rate back to 4.1% where it was in April 2025, likely a typo for 2024, while ABC does not mention this context. News Kamau attributes the fuel crisis to war in Iran, while ABC does not mention this specific cause. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis.